All right. Hello, and welcome to today's video. So if you haven't done so already, this is actually part 3 of a 3-part series that I'm doing on enlightenment and the enlightenment lifestyle. So if you haven't watched the last 2 videos, you can go back and do that after this. No problem. And we're just going to get right into it. So today I'm going to be talking about why learning to feel, learning to really deeply connect with our feelings, to really develop emotional mastery, to do this work of learning to connect with reality for yourself, which is basically what learning to feel is the path to enlightenment and is the path to becoming aware of what your programs are. So what you believe reality to be that isn't real reality, and like I say, discovering real reality for yourself. So again, as we were talking about in the last video, we need to understand again that our programming and the culture that we live in and the programs that are a part of the culture that we live in. And so this can be our country's programs, our neighborhoods programs, like, right, our school programs, the religious programs we've been given. This is global. There are many different layers and levels at which we are programmed in this life. And this is part of what makes it so difficult to identify programs and to break out of them, because they are so multifaceted. They are so everywhere. Like, again, right? It's not like what happens in the Matrix where you just like wake up one day to all of the programs and you just see reality for how it is and it's all an illusion. It's a lot deeper than that, and it's a lot more complex than that, because the programs that we have in our societies, in our world at large, are all a reflection. Okay, and this is not a popular opinion, but it's reality if we want to actually evolve. All of the programs that we see in the world, as evil and as horrible and as out of alignment and as painful and destructive and chaotic as they may seem to you, and you're not wrong, they are a reflection of where human consciousness is currently at. The systems we have created on top of reality are not there because of malice. Right? That quote, I forget who said it, but never confuse ignorance for malice. Never conflate something as malice that could easily be understood as ignorance. And essentially, as far as humanity is concerned, even those that look like they are legitimately evil, that look like they are legitimately getting pleasure from hurting other people, are ignorant. They are ignorant more than they are actually spiteful. Their capacity to behave in an evil way comes from ignorance. And it's not intellectual ignorance. Because again, so many of us are so intellectually identified that intellectual understanding is the only kind of intelligence. That once you know something in your brain logically, that you know it. And this is not reality. This is not how humans function. We learn experientially. We don't really know something until we can feel it. Okay? And so understanding, again, that when we look to people who seem evil, when we look to the structures and the systems and the ways of being out there that we can all look at and go, this is awful. This is clearly destructive. This is racist. This is homophobic. This is genocide. This is all of these things. The people who are running these structures do not feel what you feel. Okay? The people who are committing these crimes of whatever we say of as evil, when we look out into the world and we see evil people, they do not feel what you feel. If it's incredibly painful to you, and so therefore very obvious how destructive and chaotic and not good it is, that is obvious to you because you are having an experience that they aren't having. Okay, so we're going to get deep into that as we go. But again, as we were talking about last time, all of the programs that we are currently seeing in the world that don't align with how real reality functions, that are causing chaos, that are causing pain, are all derived from human ignorance, not understanding how real reality works. And this isn't even a flaw. Because again, we are a species that, just like everything else, is evolving. So all the way back, when humans first developed self-awareness, that was a massive break from the rest of nature, from the rest of everything that existed. And that was a massive step in our complexity. And now, again, we need to understand that just like when we go through the grades in school, when you learn addition and subtraction in grade 1, is that ultimate math? Like, if you really think about it, when you're learning addition and you're learning subtraction, that is as complex as your capacity in grade 1 is able to understand. Now, again, this metaphor works perfectly because there are going to be some students in the class who the curriculum of grade 1, the math curriculum of grade 1, is too complicated. They literally don't have the capacity to understand it. And they will fall behind the aggregate. There are going to be students in that class who are more advanced, who come in already with an intellect capable of understanding these concepts, and they actually need some more information. They need grade 2 curriculum. They need grade 3 curriculum because they're more advanced in the aggregate. But generally speaking, the curriculum for grade 1 is what it is because it matches where most children are when they are in grade 1. To give them less would be to understimulate them. They're not growing. To give them more would be something they can't handle. The curriculum is set up exactly to match where the aggregate, the mean, the average is for their growth path. Yes? So grade 1 math is not ultimate math. Getting 100% in grade 1 math doesn't mean you understand all of math. It means you understand all of the curriculum of grade 1. And what does that do? That gives you the foundation to go to grade 2 and learn the curriculum of grade 2, because the curriculum of grade 2 builds upon the curriculum of grade 1. Then again, you get 100% in grade 2 math. Does that mean you know all of math? No. It means you got 100% in the grade 2 concepts, which then are going to build upon themselves in grade 3 and grade 4 and grade 5 and grade 6. And then you get all the way to your PhD in math. And then you can say you're close to understanding ultimate math. Do you see what I'm saying here? But that is a huge journey. And every step along the path was not ultimate math. You weren't in your PhD until you were in your PhD. Getting 100% in grade 1 Getting 100% in grade 10, getting 100% in third year university isn't ultimate math. But is it wrong? Right? It's not ultimate math. But does that mean that grade 1 is wrong? Does that mean when you're in grade 3 and all you can handle is grade 3 that you're wrong? That you're bad? That you're evil? No. It means you're exactly where you are in your development. Okay. We need to look at society the exact same way. All of the structures that we have, all of the structures we have built, that we can look at as higher awakened or higher consciousness beings and say that is clearly destructive. That is clearly harmful. That is clearly not good. We know that. We can see that because we can feel it. You are in pain. And that is why you are on any kind of spiritual path. Anyways, you are not able to make yourself feel good in the aggregate curriculum. That's literally what's happening. And now why? Why don't you feel good in the aggregate curriculum? Why does it look like the rest of the world, and again, we can see that the world is suffering. We can see that in places where there's dictatorial governments and there's the religious persecution and there's these big problems that really do hurt people. Again, don't misconstrue what I'm saying, okay? Because it could sound like I'm saying that's just where their consciousness level is at, and so they all feel great there, and that's fine. So we shouldn't try and do anything about it. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? So just before I get into this, I just want to say, before you assume that that's what I'm saying, that's not what I'm saying. It's more complicated than that, but do listen. The structures that exist are built upon what the aggregate is currently capable of understanding. Because again, as much as we can see that structures of our governments and of all of our institutions look like they are built from the top down. Yes, that this is the structure, the people who are in control tell us what the structure is, and then humanity just has to follow along. That is true to a degree, but also, if the aggregate were more evolved than the structure that the top-down people are trying to create for us, if we were actually more evolved to the point of like the aggregate being more advanced than the systems we're being given in their consciousness level and what they're capable of handling, there would be revolution. Not because of an intellectual thing, not because of an intellectual understanding, because the pain of trying to live in alignment with the top-down structure would be so overwhelming for the majority of the people. And because if they were actually capable of going to something more ordered, more in alignment with universal consciousness, because that's what we can think of as ultimate math, with ultimate alignment, that's where we're all heading. If we were capable of taking our next growth step, what that would mean is the aggregate actually taking more personal responsibility, more control over themselves, and building a new structure that's less centralized, less power at the top dictating down, more decentralized power, more responsibility in the aggregate, and higher consciousness levels of the people working for each other. That's how society progresses. So when we see, like in the Western world right now, and let's just look at the Western world, okay? It looks really like we're being completely controlled and manipulated by the government, by education systems, by the media, by food and drug corporations, and all of these things. And I think what we are seeing in especially like the United States and Canada and these places where it's starting to get like very civil unrest is we are starting to see that we're getting to a tipping point where the number of people in the aggregate that have evolved their consciousness to a place where they're ready to call for something more complex than the systems that currently exist is reaching that tipping point. We're awakening to what? We're awakening to the fact that the systems that we've had served our complexity level for where we were at for a long time. They were built around, right? So most of the systems that we have in the, just say in the United States and Canada right now, came from where consciousness was at during World War I and World War II, right? Like we wonder where the education system came from. Well, because we look at it and we go like, it's clearly designed to indoctrinate children to become obedient, to work 9 to 5, to sit at a desk, to work mechanistically. And we think, this is clearly out of alignment with how humans function. Like, look, we need sunshine, we need play, we need tactile, we need all these things. School is evil. No, school is not evil. The school system was built when humanity in the West was at a place where continuing to generate profit, continuing to move forward in surviving and getting more and more people out of poverty and more people into abundance and all of these things required the Industrial Revolution. So I know that was the 1800s, but still, you see what I'm saying? We were starting to develop factories. We were starting to develop these mechanistic ways of production that absolutely took millions of people out of poverty. It created a system of wealth generation that we didn't have before. Okay, so is it in ultimate alignment for the human being? No. But what was it doing? Because where were we before? Before that, we were in a place where very few people had money. Very few people had resources. We couldn't redistribute resources well. We couldn't produce to the degree that we can now that allows us to be a very wealthy country, a very wealthy people. And all throughout human history, all of the structures we have built have come from our current level of understanding of what we need to do to survive and thrive. Because it's all based on, right? Everything can be boiled down and come back to where were we at in our consciousness level in terms of understanding how to acquire resources and get what we needed to survive. And then because, again, we are a humanity that has evolved in tribes. We are a humanity that has evolved in society. We have survived working together in groups, right? So all the way back to why do we feel this like I'm not enough and I'm not productive enough and that kind of narrative, that goes all the way back to the very, very, very beginning of humans surviving and thriving together. And the people who produced things that were the most valued by the culture they lived in were going to have access to more of the resources. They were going to be valued by the culture the most. And what do we do when we value something? We give it resources, right? Like all the way back to nature worship. Why did humans sacrifice to nature? Because that's what we do. We have an understanding that what we all really want, what actually feels good, is to be able to express our genetic potential, just like all other parts of nature. We have very complex genetic potential, very complex genetic expression, but that's what we want. And in order to do that, what do we need? We need the resources in order to do that. We need food, we need shelter, we need stimulation, we need clothing, we need community, we need to learn, we need a lot of things. And so the more you have access to the resources that you need in order to be able to express yourself, the better you feel. You see? So this, humanity has been following pain and pleasure forever. And now again, also, because we are not equal. Humanity is not equal, and reality is not fair. In the sense that what it has taken to survive and what has been valuable in the sense of what has been the thing that has provided the tribe with the thing they needed the most, the things that were scarce and hard to come by at any point in our evolution, those people who were better at getting those things, better at acquiring those things, so the strong men who could hunt and gather and build shelter and protect us from the neighboring tribe, they were obviously going to be more valued in the culture than a woman who was pregnant with a baby who could literally do nothing for the tribe. Simply because the man could provide more for the tribe as far as getting everyone's needs met. And then that came the power dynamic of that man then could control the resources and therefore control the people. You see? And therefore, and that has been evolving, that idea of what do we need? Who's the best at getting it for us? That person controls the resources and therefore controls the people, controls the culture. Right? What they want, what they need, what they prefer essentially goes because the people are dependent on them. You see? So we have been evolving culture to match that forever. And now, as we evolve, and what you are probably evolving into, is, again, we are graduating from these different grades. And the higher we go in this evolution that we're on, the more we come into contact with higher and higher and higher truths. Closer and closer and closer to universal reality. So the more a culture moves towards socialism, as in we are not equal, but we are going to choose to value life equally. So we are going to create a society that's more equitable. So those who have the opportunity to control the resources and to hoard more for themselves or whatever are going to choose to divest from that system and invest back into the culture, invest back into people, invest back into people who can't do it for themselves, who may never be able to. Social welfare programs, all of these things. We start to wake up from this idea that like people are just on welfare or are addicted to drugs or whatever because they're lazy or stupid or not trying hard enough. And if everyone was just working hard enough, everyone could earn the same. Not true. We understand that's not true. And we understand that when we invest in the society, everybody wins. Then, you see, we're evolving to this place. So I got a question. So according to this logic, physical legacy is more important than our emotional legacy. No. Our needs we have to understand that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That when you don't have access to food on a regular basis, your capacity to explore your emotional self, to explore what is meaningful to you, the things you want to create, is dramatically reduced. Literally because you have to keep your body alive in order to do those things. If you don't have that foundation, it is incredibly difficult to focus on these other things. Because again, without that, you can't have this. So it's not that one is more important than the other. It's just that our needs go in an order. This is why many spiritual people have said, when the body is sick, there's no point in pursuing spirituality. Tend to the body first, and then do your spiritual work. And I mean, I don't personally agree with that, but the concept is that it says, so consciousness is reduced. Again, right? Like, this is where we say it's tricky. Not necessarily reduced, but our capacity to do something about that higher awareness is significantly reduced. If you don't have food and water, what are you going to do with your high consciousness? You see? Like, we do need to understand these things. So this is why I'm saying this is a very difficult concept to wrap our minds around. But in impoverished nations, am I saying that people in impoverished nations are just low consciousness? No. But we are saying that the fact that they don't have access to clean water and food means that most of their day and most of their time is going to be taken up by the pursuit of those things. For very good reason, because that's what they need. So then there is far less time, far less of energy, far less resources left over for these higher pursuits. And it's the exact same thing in the West. If we look at the flip side of the coin, the fact that we have access to our basic needs being met, generally speaking, in the aggregate, means there's more time left over for these pursuits. And like I say, if you watch The Century of the Self, you don't even have to be pursuing them intentionally. What happened in the 1920s and the 1940s when we came into abundance for the first time? People could work their job and they could have their money and they weren't struggling to survive anymore. All of a sudden, everyone started having existential crises. They started to be like, who am I? What's my identity? What's my purpose? Why am I here? What are we doing? Why did that happen? Like, they weren't meditating. They weren't pursuing spirituality. They were literally pursuing parties and debauchery. So why did that happen? Because it's natural. We are always going to be evolving. And so long as we're getting our needs met, growth is natural. So this great awakening that started to happen, like even in the 1960s, it's been popping up over and over. Why? Because so much tipping point of enough people having those baseline needs met meant that next level of awareness, that next level of consciousness was available, readily available. So I don't want this to become a limiting belief that if you don't have a safe environment, you don't have all that stuff, you can't have higher awareness. That's not true. It's just going to be harder. It's going to be harder because you're not getting your needs met. And when we're not getting our needs met, we suffer. And when we're suffering, it's very difficult to grow. Right? Like a rose can still bloom even without all of the nutrients. It's just much harder. Do you see? Does this make sense? I hope that this makes sense. We're not saying that people have low consciousness. We're saying it's very difficult when you don't have your basic needs met to develop. And we're saying that when you do have your basic needs met, you're going to notice that it kind of happens on its own because your genetics want to express. That's what's happening. Okay. So again, the programs that we have in society are built upon the aggregate, just like in school. The curriculum the programs that are the programs. Like, so for instance, again, in the Western world, you go to school, you get a job, you work that job till you retire, you save for retirement, you get a house, you get a partner, you have children, you watch TV, you have your sports and you play with your friends, and you pursue money. That's the program. That's the curriculum. And generally, that's what people are pursuing. Why? Because it matches their current level of consciousness. That is what they're capable of understanding. It is not as painful for everyone else to work the job, watch the Netflix, whatever, eat the shitty food. They get manipulated by the TV, right? Okay, so again, let's look at this. How does the media and the government and the education systems and the religious systems, how do they manipulate people to control them? Through fear. They feed into the thing they know that people are afraid of, which still, for all of us, is not enough. We're all afraid there's not going to be enough or that our stuff is going to get taken. Because we're still in a materialistic, mechanistic paradigm. That there's only so many resources, which is true, and that we need to hoard for ourselves. And that's how success happens. The more you can hoard for yourself, the more successful you are. That's old paradigm from forever. Yeah? So we still have that. And then how, again, are we manipulated into continuing with that? We're continually triggered in our fear that someone out there is coming for your stuff. How did Hitler get everyone to do what he needed them to do what he did? He fed into their fear. These are the bad people. I will protect you from them. Follow me and follow my orders. And if the aggregate hadn't been willing to believe that narrative, if they had been at a higher consciousness place where they were like, no, that's not what's happening, no one would have followed him. They followed him because the program matched their current level. Okay, so do you think there's a way to raise or make question others near us level of consciousness? No. So that's exactly what I'm going to tell you today. That happened, Hitler, that whole thing happened because the curriculum matched where they were at. Society in general was capable of being manipulated to follow that program because they were at that level of consciousness. People in America and Canada, we still do this. They are the bad people and they're coming for your jobs. And they're coming they brought the disease. They are the threat. So just follow me, government person, and I'll protect you. We're still in that. Okay, so the next level of consciousness in the United States, for instance, is for the aggregate to get to a place of like, no, that's not what this is. That stuff for the sake of stuff isn't what is going to make me happy. Enough is enough. And I'm no longer going to fear the other because I am starting to have an experience that when we work together, it actually goes better for everybody. That when we support everyone from where they need to be supported, We understand we're different. We're not all the same. And working for ourselves, us against the world, or find my specific group of people who identify the exact same way I identify, and we'll be safe together. That's not that doesn't create safety. That group against group against group against group forces us into a consciousness level of separation, and then there has to be conflict, there has to be war, there has to be fighting. Whereas if we can learn to work together, everybody gets what they need because there is enough. But then that requires that we let go of the idea of hoarding for ourselves, right? Like, if we weren't hoarding, if we were focusing on everyone getting their needs met, other people wouldn't be a threat. They wouldn't be coming for your stuff. Because the people who are coming for your stuff aren't evil, bad people coming for your stuff. They're disenfranchised, and they're just humans looking to do whatever they need to do to try to survive. They see where the resources are, so they're going to the resources. That's human nature. We are attracted to the things that we need. And then when we are in systems where what we need is literally withheld from us, we go into fight and flight, and we operate from that paradigm. So that's what's happening. So if we really want to break free from these programs, so that's like the whatever. So now let's talk about individuals. So what do we do with all of this? Because again, the question, can we awaken society? No. The first and most painful thing you're going to recognize, and I'm right here with you, is that you can't force someone from grade 1 to grade 6. You can't just take a grade 1 student, put them in grade 6, and then have them be able to do grade 6. And as painful and as horrible as this sounds and feels, until the aggregate gets to a place where their consciousness level is high enough that they're ready for something new, it wouldn't matter if we put the most high consciousness, benevolent leader in charge of society. That person would try to make change, try to implement systems, try to do things from a higher level of consciousness. We're seeing this. And what happens? The aggregate doesn't go, oh, great, you brought something higher and awesome, let's do it. You're going to rescue us from our pain. No. What do? They vilify. They are afraid of. They say that's evil. They say you're taking away my stuff. You're taking away my security. Because the higher level person is bringing solutions to a problem that people aren't even aware they have. Like their level of consciousness makes them be able to see things and understand things that the general population simply cannot. This is why, again, we always think we're going to overthrow the dictator. But if the aggregate hasn't evolved to a higher level of consciousness where they want a different, they're replacing that dictator with something of a higher level of consciousness, something closer to universal understanding of oneness, what's going to happen? A new dictator who does the exact same thing is just going to come and fill the place. We saw the opposite of that in Germany. After the Holocaust, people woke up on a general level. They were like, whoa, no, we can't operate like this. The pain of that was enough that it made them literally have a paradigm shift in their values, in the way that they saw the world, in the way that they structured things, because the aggregate became evolved enough to change their systems to something more complex. Less it's they're the bad people, we're the good people, be on the good side. To more, what would happen if we supported everyone? That's far more complex. So again, what is the aggregate going to do? when we present them with a new idea that's beyond their consciousness level. They fight it. They vilify it. They look at it and they say, that's evil, that's bad, that's wrong, that's hateful, that's harmful, you're going to take my stuff, you're going to ruin my life. They do not see the benefit. Why? Because they can't. They literally can't. Their consciousness level cannot understand it. So they will fight you. And they will fear it. And it is not until they have sufficiently evolved so that the physical pain of what they are doing in the system is so much that the fear of change gets overridden by the pain of staying the same. And this is exactly how we are as human beings. Because changing to something higher level means questioning your paradigm. It means losing your foundations for how you think reality works. That's what evolution is. That's what consciousness expansion is. It's continually coming to this place of like, whoa, I thought reality worked like this, and it was this level of complexity. And then I just got blown into a much bigger understanding of how reality works. And it's way more complex than I thought. And the solutions to my problems are not as straightforward and as simple as I thought. And we will fight that awareness until the pain of staying where we are, like I say, overrides the fear of expanding into something far more complicated. So sorry I don't live in Germany now, but how that is changed after Soha. Do they see the value of life regarding ethnicity? Okay, so again, I'm not super educated on Germany, and I may be totally wrong about that. But what I want to say is just, at least the rest of the world kind of saw for, and I think that this is something we need to also understand, is that like the same energies that caused the Holocaust of like they are bad and we are good and all that stuff, that still exists pretty much everywhere. Like human consciousness hasn't really expanded beyond that. We're doing it in slightly different ways, but we're still doing it. And so, again, it's a sobering idea to understand where humanity is probably actually at in its consciousness. That we're still triggered by that. We're still living like within that system in most places in the world. War, genocide, homophobia, all the isms, racism, sexism, like all of the abuses of power that still happen, that's kind of where we're at. And it's sad, but it's true. And it is causing a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil and a lot of chaos. But at the same time, it's grade oneers run the world. And that's where our consciousness is at. And until we're ready as a humanity or as a culture or as a country to evolve to something more complex, we are going to fight to maintain the current system. And there will always be people who look like they are benefiting from this exploitation. Right? We can see there are definitely people who have way more resources, who have way more access, who have way more whatever, at the expense of other people. But this isn't ultimately true in the sense that it's destroying the people who are doing that. These systems are destroying everybody. But we're on an evolutionary path, and we're just in grade 2. And so it's a chaotic mess. So this is why, again, if you're one of the people who have incredible levels of pain when you try to live in alignment with reality, number one, or with consensus, number one, you are feeling something that not everyone else is feeling. And this is, again, a very difficult thing to wrap our minds around. But your experience of the program is very different from the experience of everyone else in the program. Because again, you were exposed to the same shitty food, the same toxic media, the same programming. You probably went through the regular schooling system. You were parented, you were socialized, and yet you're not convinced. You can't be manipulated and controlled like that. As much as you can, there's still these parts of you that just won't let you follow the program. And then you hate yourself for it because, again, that was in your childhood a threat to your survival, to not follow the program. Getting your needs met required being loved and approved of by your caregivers because you couldn't provide for yourself. So your nervous system learned that whatever you have to do to fit in is the thing that you do to survive. But now, because your consciousness level is higher than the aggregate, what you feel when you try to participate in the aggregate is pain that goes far beyond what most people are feeling. Because it doesn't match your consciousness level. For the people who are going along, watching Netflix, watching their news that tells them that the bad people are coming to take their stuff and they're afraid of it and they want to keep their guns and they want to war and their religious wars and like all of these things, they don't feel the pain of that the way that you do. What they're participating in makes sense to them. It doesn't make sense to you. So we have to stop projecting our consciousness level onto everyone else as though they are experiencing what we are experiencing. They aren't. Your experience of these things is telling you where your consciousness level is at. And therefore, what you need to evolve into, how you need to live in relativity to the universal laws. And what this means is that, again, what everyone else is doing that doesn't feel so terrible to them. It's still chaotic, it's still destructive, it's war, it's genocide, it's all these things, but it makes sense to them. And if we were to try to give them something more complex, like you need to be friends with the neighboring tribe, they can't do it. Because the pain of change, the pain of that higher level of awareness is is more than the pain of whatever they're experiencing and whatever they're doing. We don't change until we're ready. And until we're ready, we will fear change. We will vilify change. We will push it away. So what everyone else is doing is correct relative to their consciousness level. Otherwise, it would be too painful and there would be a revolution. We would all be calling for something different. So because you are calling for something different, what you have control over is your consciousness. What you have control over is slowly, how you live your life. So does this mean that you have complete control and society doesn't have any dictating over you and you? No, of course not. This is a very complicated process of awakening to our programming, to that which we see the programs of the world, the curriculum of the world don't work for you. That is hard, because then that means now you are going to have to do the emotional mastery work to figure out the consensus reality, pain and pleasure that you're feeling. So the consensus reality, I feel bad when I do this because it gets me rejected, even though it's true. And the consensus reality pleasure of this feels good because it gets me accepted, which makes me feel safe. Versus true pain and pleasure, which is this hurts because it's out of alignment with my level of complexity, what I am capable of understanding and therefore living in alignment with as far as universal truth is concerned. That's different from what the aggregate is capable of. And this feels good because it's in alignment with real truth, my real values, my real consciousness level. And again, the farther your consciousness level is from the aggregate programming, the more parts of you would have been rejected, abandoned, abused, neglected by your caregivers in society. Because what does society do with something that's higher level consciousness? Embrace it, love it, say, oh good, teach us? Nope. Fear. Attack. That's why you were rejected by your caregivers. That's why you were rejected by society. Your higher level awareness, your higher level feeling, your higher level whatever it was, expression, what you needed to grow was beyond the capacity of those around you to understand. And so it was feared, it was vilified, it was rejected. And because you were dependent upon these people for everything, Your nervous system learned self-hate. This part of me must be bad because it's blocking me from getting my needs met. And then it cut you off from your true feeling. That which felt genuinely good to you and genuinely bad to you. That's you interacting with real reality. It's not an intellectual thing. The intellect follows the feeling. But most of us are disconnected from our true feelings because, again, in our childhoods, survival wasn't about aligning with real reality. You didn't get your needs met through interacting with reality itself. You got your needs met through interacting with human beings. They were overriding reality. Your caregivers rejecting you was overriding reality. Your caregivers accepting you was overriding reality. The programs that you were given of this is what's a good person and this is what's a bad person, this is right and this is wrong, are in alignment with what the aggregate thinks is reality. What the aggregate thinks is required for survival. And as far away as that is from the truth of you, the more pain you are in. So, you weren't able to be completely programmed. And again, the average curriculum that everyone else is running is incredibly painful for you and not for them. It's painful for them because there's universal misalignment. But it's not as painful for them as it is for you because there's relative alignment. It's where they are at. If it doesn't work for you, it's because you need something different than the aggregate. Your blueprint, your curriculum doesn't fit the average person, the aggregate. So now you are going to have to figure out for yourself what your curriculum is. And that is not going to happen intellectually, and you are not going to find it in the aggregate. You are going to find it through connecting back to your true pain and pleasure mechanisms. Because again, it is pain and pleasure that will guide you. This is teaching me what I need to know. This is against my biology. This is against my evolution. But how do we connect with true pain and pleasure when our wires are so crossed that being rejected is death and being accepted is life? And then what was required for us to be accepted is actually in real reality death. And what is required for us to get rejected in real reality is life. Emotional mastery. So that's what I teach in my mystery school. That's what I'm teaching in all of my free content, is learning to be with your emotions, your shame, your guilt, and all of these stories you've created for why you need to be this kind of person and you can't be this and this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong. You have to question your whole paradigm. You have to become embodied. Learning to feel your feelings instead of telling yourself your story of what you already think those feelings mean is the first step in its long, hard process. Okay, this is the map. This is not the territory. This is a 10, 20-year process. But this is what it is. And the one person's consciousness you have control over is yours. So if you are in pain, your way out is first doing this nervous system healing work of reconnecting with your emotions, reconnecting with your body, reconnecting with all of this trauma, and working through where everything hurt, and stopping blaming yourself, getting out of the shame and the guilt that protects you, that keeps you in alignment with what you think you need to be accepted. Connecting with that, connecting with those stories, and then giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. That hurt for a reason. It wasn't right. And then that being a complete paradigm melting thing. Because you're not going to feel capable to figure it out for yourself. You're not going to feel capable of knowing all these things. So then blaming your caregivers, blaming society, saying everyone else got it wrong isn't necessarily going to feel good. Because then you're going to be like, well, then how do I know what's right? And this process of learning to witness, learning to reconnect with something higher, learning to have these enlightenment experiences through making ourselves safe is how we do this. Because we have to connect with something greater than just humanity or just this life in order to feel safe enough to take weird, different steps. So that's why this is an overview. But I want you to understand why life is so painful for you. Because your curriculum doesn't match the aggregate. What everyone else is doing doesn't fit what you need to be doing. And you were programmed in a society that functions together. So going and doing something different is going to feel like death for your nervous system. Because forever, getting rejected meant death. But it is only through going, and this is why, like, a lot of people ask me, like, how do I find friends on this path? How do I find my like-minded community? And I'm like, don't look for that. You need to disconnect from culture and what everyone else is doing to go into yourself. Every spiritual master went into the wilderness, went into isolation, had these times of disconnection from culture so that they could start to see the culture, right? Because again, when we're swimming in it, you can't see it. So this doesn't mean you have to move. It doesn't mean it's just the more time you can take away from what everyone is doing and consuming the news and consuming all these things and just feeling and being and connecting and processing and doing all these things. Like I say, like I have 2 huge curriculums in my mystery school for processing, but you can find lots of ways, like just journal, just being in your body. There's so many different somatic things you can do. Just trusting yourself. Just starting to say, okay, this feels bad. Why does this feel bad? Instead of assuming you already know. This feels good. Why does this feel good? Instead of assuming you already know. Allowing yourself to not know. These processes that we do. This is how we disconnect. And so reconnecting to your feeling. Then you will start to understand your programming. Then you will start to get the answers. So you're not even going to figure it out. Don't even look towards the goal of what's my program and what's real. Make the goal learning to feel. If you make that the goal, I'm going to learn how to actually be with my feelings, let them run through my body, not make up a story about them, let it process and run through my body and inform my intellect. Everything else will come from there naturally. The insights, the awakening, the awareness, all of that stuff will naturally flow. You don't have to pursue that. Don't pursue that. Don't pursue the end. Do the training. Learn to sit with your body and not make up a story. That's as simple as I can put it. Learn to feel what you're feeling, and rather than assuming guilt and shame or trying to fix it, feel it. A little by little by little. Start to focus on, why am I doing this behavior? What's wrong with me? Why am I not doing this? What's my need that's not being met? What's my need that I was told I'm not allowed to have? Because self-love, all self-love is understanding your own needs so that you can meet them and then express in this world. That's what self-love is. Understanding your own needs so you can meet them so that you can express in this world. Because again, growth is natural when your needs are met. You don't have to pursue growing. Pursue understanding what you need. Pursue getting those needs met. And growth will happen on its own. This is how we deprogram. So if you want tools, come join the mystery school. It's long, it's drawn out, it's not so obvious. It's not an awakening experience. It's a very, 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 very slow reconnecting to yourself, reconnecting to reality, and then living from that place. Follow me on YouTube. Go to my website. I have a gabillion blogs. Other people read Martha Beck's books. There's lots of tools, but that's what this is. If it hurts for you, don't worry about them. Because what you will do and how you will contribute to the new world, again, you're not going to figure that out by focusing on the problems of the world. You're going to figure that out by figuring out who you are, and then how you contribute to the whole will again be a natural outpouring of that. You will contribute to making it a little bit easier and a little bit safer for anyone coming up behind you the more you do this work for yourself. So do your enlightenment work. That's how you're going to figure out what to do to build the new world. Figure out what you need. Learn to make those needs happen. Learn to make yourself safe. More and more every day. Then you will naturally contribute to the whole. You will know what to do. Okay? So that's that. Reconnecting to feeling is the path. Don't make it about figuring out what you're going to do. Don't make it about what your purpose is. Don't make it about how do I force myself to grow. Don't make it about even expanding your consciousness. That will all happen naturally when you get your needs met. Your work is to discover what your needs are. And that's going to come through feeling. Learning how to feel. What feels good, what feels bad, why does it feel good and bad? What do I actually need? And then breaking away from society, letting yourself get rejected, letting yourself be weird, and doing it anyways. Showing your nervous system that you can survive it. Because when you do that, then it gets easier and easier and easier. The more you face that fear of if I am this way, I'm going to get rejected and then I'm going to die, and you do it anyways, and you don't die, you will get rejected, and then you won't die. And then you can still get your needs met because you're an adult now. You're not a child. More and more, little by little, you empower yourself in these little ways. And I'm not saying that everyone can just empower themselves and just be fine. No, there are absolute systems that are absolutely oppressive and all of that stuff. But again, you will figure out how to make that better in the ways that you can by doing this work first. So as much as is possible. I'm not saying it's universally available for every person to just meet their needs and become their higher self today. Absolutely not. There are things that we are fighting against that are antagonistic to us. As much as you can, get on your own side. Like, that's the first thing. Even if you can't change anything in the outer world, if you can learn to stop blaming and shaming and abusing yourself, you will naturally evolve your consciousness, because that's getting a need met. And then little by little, you will be able to take little steps in your outer reality. It's a process. It's a progress, like 10, 20 years. Slow but steady. Just start to become your own safe place. Start to process your feelings. Start to acknowledge what you need. Start to see where you can get those needs met, even if it means people reject you or don't understand you. But it doesn't threaten your survival. And you'll think it's going to, and in lots of ways it won't. And slowly, 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 you start to build your own life, your own curriculum. You follow your path, and then you're on it. And you didn't have to figure out who you were. You didn't have to figure out what your purpose was. It's just a natural unfolding of you following your genetic potential because you made yourself safe inside. You figure out your connection to reality this way. And then you have all the enlightenment experiences. Okay? It's feeling. So that's that. I hope that made sense. Yes, the world is in a very low consciousness place. It just absolutely is. And the world is not going to accept you. It's not going to celebrate you. It's not going to easily go for the new thing. The revolutions that need to take place, we're not at a place where enough people are aware enough to want that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop pursuing it. You pursue it. You start to live in alignment with it as much as you can. Because that's what happens. Consciousness of the aggregate shifts slowly over time through these ideas just becoming more and more normal. More and more people adopting them, living by them, it starts to become more normal, and then it's just the accepted thing. So you doing this work is normalizing these things. And you will be vilified, you will be attacked, you will be misunderstood, people will say that you're unhealthy, they will, right? I've gotten everything, all the comments, and yet it doesn't matter. I'm following reality. And I'm still here. And I'm making it more and more normal for other people to do it. So I live a really weird lifestyle, and most people in the aggregate attack me and don't understand. But all of you don't fear me because I'm your next level, or I'm right where you are. I'm just giving you permission to take your next step. Because you're ready. The pain of staying the same is overriding the pain of change. So you're ready. So just do what you're ready to do. Don't worry about them. And you can support the people who are right up behind you. You can't convince the people who are fighting you because they're not ready. They're fighting you because they're not ready. Their consciousness cannot understand. You can absolutely support the people who are like, please tell me. I want to know. Like, tell me that thing that you have. What is so different about you? Those are the people you can support. You just support the people who are coming up behind you. And they're supporting the people coming up behind them, supporting the people. And then we just have to be patient. Humanity is where it's at. You're way ahead. So how are you going to build a life for yourself? Because the aggregate isn't going to do it for you. And you're not going to convince the aggregate to get to where you are. So what do you need to do for yourself? And then again, it will turn you into an activist. You will work towards a more equitable world for everyone else. Just naturally when you do this. Not fighting evil people. You will understand why the systems are the way they are. Ignorance. And you will just be working to build the new systems. Just be like, see, it's not so scary. That's what you're going to do. You're just going to support. Okay? So I love you. You're amazing. You're connected to the whole. But you doing your work to figure out what you need to live, what works for you, as weird as it is, as not in alignment with society as it is, whatever, that is your greatest contribution to all of us. Because everything you do from there is going to be contributing to the new world. Everything you do from that place is contributing to the new world. Because we are all one and connected. If you are actually genuinely doing what you need to do for you, you are doing what you need to do for all of us. If you're ignoring yourself to try to fight for a thing for everyone else, it's cutting your nose off to spite your face. It's starving the liver to try to help the kidney. It doesn't work. We have to stop running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to fix the world. It's not going to happen. Align yourself. And then your actions from that place, you're not going to be sitting at home navel gazing. You're still going to be an active participant in the world. So your actions from that aligned place are your aligned actions. You won't have to figure them out. You will feel what feels right. Okay, so this is not about checking out of society, whatever, just let them kill each other. I'm not going to help the people. You will know, okay, I need to donate here. I can do this here. I can provide this here. And it feels good to me to do that. Okay? Evolve your consciousness. Learn to feel your feelings. Be in your body. Be in your experience. Heal your childhood trauma. Learn to embrace your whatever you are. So everywhere there's guilt and everywhere there's shame, that's a place to look. Everywhere you are coping and self-sabotaging, that's a place to look. Those are where your programs are. Those are where you don't even know who you are that you're rejecting. Where you're coping and you're self-sabotaging, those are where you need to grow. Bring love to those places. Learn to develop the witness. To witness those parts as a loving parent would witness those parts instead of looking to fix them or change them or like you already know what the answer is. You don't. And then when it's revealed to you what you are, it's going to be incredibly scary. Okay, so just know that's normal. You're gonna be afraid. You're gonna not want to know it. You're gonna not want to see it. You're gonna have the same revelation over and over again and reject it. And you're gonna try to do it, and it's gonna be so scary to your nervous system. And you're gonna run away, and you're gonna forget, and you're gonna go back to coping, and then you're gonna do all these things. That's how this goes. Because it's scary and it's hard and it's reprogramming your nervous system. That's why my curriculum in the school is 2 years long. It's practice, 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 practice. Every day showing up a little bit. There's no quick fix. There's no pill to take. Okay? Okay. So I love you. Have a good night. Have a good day whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you in the next video.